Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our final session on BUSN 501 final revision. Now, with regards to topic one, you would have recalled watching the two videos on strategy for competitive advantage. I would like you to revisit these two videos, and it is shown on the slides as you can see. Now, what is business strategy? The definition of business strategy is a long-term plan of any action by the company designed to achieve a particular goal or a set of goals or even objectives of the organization. As simple as that. But what is important is the strategy. The strategy is therefore the management's game plan for strengthening the performance of the company, and it states how business should be conducted to achieve the desired goal of the organization. Now consider maintaining competitive success or even surviving over long periods of time is difficult for any company of any size. So how much credit or blame does a leader deserve? You will see that leaders do make a difference as far as their performance of their own organization. Simply because in order for them to achieve success, they must be proactive and anticipate for change, both in the internal as well as the external environment that they are operating in. And besides, they must continually refine their strategies if they are already put in place some time ago. It will not remain constant. What has happened in the past and was successful does not necessarily mean that using the same strategy will be again successful now and for that matter in the future. They must be aware of the external opportunities and threats that surrounds them in the ever-changing business landscape. Leadership, therefore, must thoroughly understand the company's resources and capabilities in terms of their financial resources as well as the human capital. They will have to make strategic management both a process as well as a way of thinking throughout the organization to move them forward successfully and compete effectively against rivals. Now, strategic management involves three key things. First, it's about analysis. Now, as we all know that all companies and organizations must have a strategic goal. And what are their strategic goals? It is simply the vision and the mission and the strategic objective that the management had put in place in order for them to compete successfully against the rivals. And also the in-depth analysis of both the internal as well as the external environment in which they operate in. Secondly, it's about formulation of their decision. Any specific action plan that they should take in order for their industry to compete in. What sort of industry should they compete in? And how should they compete in those industries? These are the questions which the leadership must ask themselves before they are able to formulate the specific action plan. And then finally, proceed on to the actual implementation of the actions, which is simply allocating the necessary resources, may it be financial or human capital, or may it be a specific process or a strategy. It is simply to design the organization in a way that to bring the intended strategies to reality. So what is strategic management? It is therefore the analysis, decisions, and actions that an organization must undertake in order to create and sustain a competitive advantage. Strategic management is therefore the study of why some firms outperform others. And what is strategy? Strategy is simply the ideas, the decisions, and the actions that enable a company to succeed. Topic 2 discusses about the leadership in the strategic management process. I would have mentioned that you have seen the 2 videos, and I'd like you to revisit them. As you can see from the slides, the key thing is the trends today is the emergence of the importance of the knowledge worker in today's economy. It is very important for us to realize that it's not simply people or worker in our organization. It is a knowledge worker. And what do you mean by a knowledge worker? A knowledge worker is simply a person who is resourceful and seek an answer for themselves in a way using their talent, as well as various tools that's available to him. It is paramount for managers to recognize the importance of top talent within their organization, which is the human capital, but also the need to leverage human capital in order to innovate. For what? So that at the end of the day, the company can develop products or services that create value for people and their customers to want to buy. This way, companies are then able to move ahead of their competition. It is therefore very important for leadership to recognize this, to constantly create value or to add value to their organization performance. Now, a company's value is not simply derived from its physical assets, but rather it is based on knowledge, know-how, and the intellectual assets, all embedded into the people, which is the human capital of the organization. As we all know, in the knowledge economy, wealth is increasingly created by effective management of knowledge workers, instead of by efficient control of physical and financial assets. It is not to say that it is not important to have an efficient control of the physical and financial assets, but really the crux of the issue is the knowledge worker. Today, more than 50% of the GDP, or gross domestic product, in developed economies is knowledge-based. It is based on intellectual assets and intangible people skills. Human capital is the foundation of intellectual capital. But the attraction, development, as well as in retention of human capital is a necessary but not sufficient condition for organizational success. Social capital, the appropriate use of technology, and protection of physical and intellectual property is also critical. In topic 3, we talk about analyzing the organization external environment. Of course, we have another internal environment for companies to consider about. That's for topic 4. In this topic 3, there are again 2 videos which I like you to watch as to refresh your understanding of the companies operating in the external environment. At the heart of business strategy is the question how and why do some companies outperform others? It is the challenge for leadership to develop and implement those strategies that will provide competitive advantage, as well as able to sustain over time. It is not easy for leadership to constantly evolve, watching and monitoring and taking appropriate steps to rectify and to manage the day-to-day operations. But this is the crux of the whole thing. If companies want to outperform others, that is the heart of our business strategy. They must learn to respond quickly in the changing business landscape so that they will be able to sustain over a period of time. This slide talks about the importance of external environment. Imagine with me, if a company does not keep pace with changes in the external environment, it becomes very difficult to sustain a competitive advantage and also to deliver a strong financial results for the organization. So how do managers become environmentally aware? Well, it is by doing scanning, monitoring, and gathering competitive intelligence, and using these input to develop forecasts. Then scenario planning and SWOT analysis can be used to help anticipate major future changes in the external environment, therefore preparing the company to do more extensive analysis of the forces in the general environment and the industry or competitive environment in which they operate in. Now, concerning environmental forecasting, there are several key tools that we can use. Firstly, the SWOT analysis. It talks about the strengths and weaknesses as well as the opportunities and threats within the environment in which the company operates in, both internally as well as externally. We can look at the political, environmental, social, and technological changes over time in which the company operates in as well. The third thing is about scenario analysis. The best case versus the worst case and the expected outcome of each scenario which the company can do their planning. It is interesting to note that porters offer an alternate forecasting based on the 5 forces model of industry competition. And finally, the digital technology affects competitive forces as well. Now, I want to return to the environmental forecasting. What is environmental forecasting? It is really the development of a possible projections about the direction, the scope, the speed, and the intensity of environmental change. Scenario analysis gives an in-depth approach to environmental forecasting that involves experts' detailed assessment of societal trends, economics, politics, technology, or other dimension of the external environment. Now, what would happen if the environment should change dramatically? Well, we have to address the need to consider the wider context than the narrow traditional markets, laying down guidelines for at least 10 years in the future to anticipate rapid change. Porter's 5 forces model of industry competition is a tool for examining the industry level competitive environment, especially the ability of the company in that industry to set prices and minimize costs. It also includes the threats of new entrants, the bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of suppliers, as well as the threat of substitute products and services. And finally, the intensity of rivalry among competitors in that given industry. Now, each of these forces affect a company's ability to compete in a given market. And together, they determine the profit potential for a particular industry. Now, regarding the digital technology that affect the competitive forces, we all know we are living in the internet society, in a very globalized network, and nowadays link all the computers that use common transmission formats, exchange information and store data. We all are very familiar with the social media, and we use it every day. The internet and other digital technologies and platforms have fundamentally changed the way businesses interact with each other and with consumers. These changes have affected industry forces in a way that create many new strategic challenge for the company. Topic 4 covers the analyzing the organization internal environment. Again, we have 2 videos. I'm sure you are familiar with it now. If not, please revisit the 2 videos for understanding. In assessing the internal environment of the company, as a method of analyzing the company's internal environment, we can think of 3 things. First, the value chain analysis, which talks about the value chain from the beginning of sourcing the material right to the end of the value chain, which is the consumer. We want to look also at the resource-based view of the company, which is basically the inherent ability of the human capital, whether it is a knowledge worker or what. And finally, the balance scorecard, which gives a company an idea of their positioning. Now, this slide talks about the importance of the internal environment. What if 2 companies compete in the same industry and both have many strengths in a variety of functional areas, like, for example, marketing, operations, logistics, and etc. However, one of these firms outperforms the other by a wide margin over a long period of time. Then you may ask me, how can this be? The value creating activities that the company manages well and the bundles of resources and capabilities that the company has created and nurtured over time are therefore very crucial to answering these questions. And what are these 2 questions? Which activities must a company effectively manage or integrate in order to attain competitive advantage in the marketplace? Second, which resources and capabilities must a company create and nurture in order to sustain a competitive advantage? These are the 2 key questions that leadership must address and recognize in moving the company forward when they analyze the internal environment. In evaluating firm performance, there are several ways. First, we look at the limitation of the SWOT analysis, and then we move on to the value chain analysis. They give us an idea how our internal value chain can support our company's performance. The better we are in knowing where exactly we stand gives us the capacity to be able to deliver our promises. Next, we look at the resource-based view of the company. Basically, it is about the human resource capital that exists within the organization to perform the specific role or task. Traditionally, we also look at the financial ratio analysis and, of course, the balance scorecard in helping us to understand the organization. Now, I want to deal a bit more about the value chain analysis. This value chain analysis is a strategic analysis of an organization that uses value-creating activities. And what are these? These are values in the amount, is the amount that buyers are willing to pay for a firm provides them, and is measured by total revenue, which is a reflection of the price a firm's product commands and the quantity it can sell. Now, a company is profitable only when the value it receives exceeds the total cost involved in creating its product or service. Creating value for buyers that exceeds the cost of production, that is the margin, is a key concept used in analyzing a firm's competitive position. With regards to balanced scorecard, it's simply a method of evaluating a company's performance using performance measures from the customer's internal innovation and learning and financial perspective. It includes financial measures that reflect the results of actions already taken, but it complements these indicators with measures of customer satisfaction, internal process, and the organization innovation and improvement activities. For example, operational measures that drive future financial performance. Therefore, the balanced scorecard approach recognizes how the interests of a variety of stakeholders can be interrelated. Topic 5 is about decision making, and we are halfway through our program. In decision making, there are again 2 videos for you to watch. I hope you take some time to watch them. In strategic control systems, may be used effectively to implement strategies internally. There are 3 ways. Firstly, traditional and contemporary approaches to control and outlines informational, which is basically the monitoring, the performance milestones. Secondly, it's about behavioral. For example, rewards, culture, boundaries, and these are techniques for achieving control. And finally, the corporate governance. Now you will see that these are strategic controls within the organization, and that leadership can use it effectively to implement the strategies. What is strategic control? Strategic control is the process of monitoring and correcting a company's strategy and performance. An organization does a strategic analysis of the external environment and then evaluates its internal capabilities for responding to those conditions. It then formulates a strategy for sustaining a competitive advantage, so that to implement this strategy, and once this implementation takes place, this strategy must be monitored and adjusted accordingly. Effective strategic control system therefore allows for companies to take corrective actions, to modify them so as to gain competitive advantage. That is strategic control. In topic 6, we talk about competitive strategies. In the previous topics, we have focused on the analysis of the external and internal environment of the organization. Now, in this topic, the emphasis is on the formulation of competitive strategies at the business level. Since the business level is where competition takes place, therefore, a company's performance at this level is vital to its overall success. The topic is divided into two major sections. The first section draws on Michael Porter's framework of generic strategies, and that is about overall cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. We describe each of these strategies and provide examples of firms that successfully use them to outperform rivals, and suggest some pitfalls that managers must avoid to successfully pursue these strategies. The second section of the topic addresses an important contingency in the effective use of business level strategies. For example, the industry life cycles. The stages of life cycle are firstly introduction, second growth, third maturity, and finally the decline. All these have important implications for a company's relative emphasis on functional capabilities and value creating activities. It also discusses turnaround strategies, which enable a company to reposition its competitive position in an industry, and how such strategies can lead to sustainable advantage. Now, the viability of a firm's success is driven by both the internal operations of the company as well as the desires and preference of the market. Firms that succeed have the appropriate resources and the cost structure to meet the needs of the environment. So what is business level strategy? A business level strategy is designed for a firm or a division of the firm that competes within a single business. For example, generic strategies. It is an analysis of business strategies into basic types based on the breadth of target market and type of competitive advantage. Let me repeat. Generic strategies is an analysis of business strategies into basic types based on breadth of the target market, which is industry-wide versus narrow market segment, and the type of competitive advantage, which is whether you are choosing low cost versus uniqueness. Now I want to talk a bit more about digital technologies. What are digital technologies? These are information that is in a numerical form which facilitates its storage, transmission, analysis, and manipulation. Transaction costs refer to all the various expenses associated with conducting businesses. It applies not just to buy or sell transaction, but to the cost of interacting with every part of the company's value chain, within and outside the company. The use of disintermediation, which is the process of bypassing buyer channel intermediaries such as wholesalers, distributors, and retailers, Removing intermediaries lowers transaction costs. Therefore, the internet reduces the cost to search for a product or a service. Not only is the need for travel eliminated, but so is the need to maintain a physical address or permanent retail location. However, most of the advantages associated with lower transaction costs can be duplicated quickly and without threat of infringement on proprietary information. Therefore, companies can also become overly enamored and with using internet for cost cutting will jeopardize customer relation or neglect other cost centers. In topic 7, we discussed about supplementing strategies. Now, corporate level strategies, which is a strategy that focuses on gaining long-term revenue, profits, and market value through managing operation in multiple businesses. Determining how to create value through entering new markets, for example, introducing new products, or developing new technologies is a vital issue in strategic management. But maintaining a focus on creating value is essential to long-term success. Therefore, these questions must be continually asked and answered. And what are these? What businesses should we compete in? That's number one. Number two, how can these businesses be managed in a way to create synergy that is more value by working together than if they were free-standing units? Strategic alliances and joint ventures are assuming an increasingly prominent role in the strategy of leading companies, both large and small. A strategic alliance can help companies better understand customer needs, acquire know-how for promoting the product, acquire access to the proper distribution channels. For example, Zara cooperating with Tata in India, for example. Strategic alliance enable companies to pool capital, value-creating activities or facilities in order to reduce costs. Strategic alliance may also be used to build jointly on the technological expertise of two or more companies, enabling them to develop products beyond the capability of other companies acting independently. In topic 8, we talk about international focus strategies. The global marketplace provides many opportunities for companies to increase their revenue base and profitability. Also, in today's knowledge-based economy, there are opportunities to create advantages by leveraging companies' knowledge across national boundaries. However, along with the potential benefits, there are pitfalls that are facing the company and that the company must avoid in order to be successful. We address this topic in 4 major sections. We draw on Porter's diamond of national advantage as a framework to explain the level of success for an industry in a given country. We address some of the motivations as well as the risks or pitfall associated with international expansion, including the emerging trend towards greater offshoring and outsourcing. We address how companies can attain a competitive advantage in a global marketplace. Here we focus on two opposing forces that companies face when entering international markets, for example, cost reduction and local adaptation. Depending on the intensity of these forces, companies should select among four basic or generic strategies like international, global, or multi-domestic, and transnational. The final section addresses the four entry strategies that companies typically choose from entering foreign markets. These vary along a continuum from a low investment, low control, which is exporting, to high investment, high control, which is wholly owned subsidiary and greenfield ventures. The trade among nations has increased dramatically in recent years, and it is estimated that by 2020, the trade across nations will exceed trade within nations. This makes international expansion a viable diversification strategy. Now, in a variety of industries such as semicon, automobiles, commercial aircraft, telecommunication, computers, and consumer electronics, it is almost impossible to survive unless companies scan the world for competitors, customers, human resources, suppliers, and technology. Companies need to know how to be successful and create value and diversify into global markets. Some of the questions that need to be answered include: 1. What explains the level of success of a given industry in a given country? Number 2, what are some of the major motivations and risks associated with international expansion? Number 3, how can firms handle the opposing forces of cost reduction and adaptation? Now, should a firm pursue international, global, multi-domestic, or transnational strategies? And finally, what entry strategies should a company choose in order to enter a foreign market? A global strategy implies a company is interested in lowering costs. But what is global strategy? Well, global strategy is simply a strategy based on a company's centralization and control by the corporate office, with the primary emphasis on controlling costs, and used in industry where the pressure for local adaptation is low and the pressure for lowering costs is high. Since the primary emphasis is on controlling costs, the corporate office strives to achieve a strong level of coordination and integration across the various businesses. Companies following a global strategy strive to offer standardized products and services, as well as to locate manufacturing, R&D, and marketing activities in only a few locations. Now, although costs may be lower, the company following a global strategy may, in general, have to forego opportunities for revenue growth, since it does not invest extensive resources in adapting product or offering from one market to another. Many industries requiring high levels of R&D, such as pharmaceuticals, semicons, and jet aircraft, follow global strategies. This slide talks about the various entry modes for international strategies. A company has many options available to it when it decides to expand into international markets. Firstly, they can do exporting. And exporting is producing goods in one country to sell to residents of another country. This strategy enables the company to invest the least amount of resources in terms of its products, its organization, and its overall corporate strategies. However, the company has a limited ability to tailor its product to meet local market needs. Second, licensing. A contractual arrangement in which a company receives a royalty or a fee in exchange for the right to use its trademark, patent, trade secret, or other valuable intellectual property. Third, franchising. Franchising is a contractual arrangement in which a company receives a royalty or a fee in exchange for the right to use intellectual property. It usually involves a longer time than licensing and includes other factors such as monitoring of operations, training, and advertising. Franchising has the advantage of limiting the risk exposure that a company has in overseas market, while at the same time, the company is able to expand the revenue base of the company. An advantage of licensing is that the company granting a license incurs little risk, since it does not have to invest any significant resources into the country itself. In turn, the licensee, the company receiving the license, gains access to the trademark, patent, and so on, and is able to potentially create competitive advantages. However, the licensor gives up control of its product and forgoes potential revenues and profits. Now, strategic alliance and joint ventures allow companies to increase revenues and reduce costs, as well as enhance learning and diffuse technologies. However, trust is a vital element. And finally, wholly owned subsidiary. And what's that? It's a business in which a multinational company owns 100% of the stock. A company can establish a wholly owned subsidiary by acquiring an existing company in the home country or developing a totally new operations, often referred to as a greenfield venture. This can be very expensive and risky as well, as is most appropriate where a company already has the appropriate knowledge and capabilities. It can leverage rather easily through multiple locations. In topic 9, we discuss the implementing strategies and modeling. Strategic management and leadership are essential for entrepreneurial success. Now, to remain competitive, established companies must seek out opportunities for growth and avenues for strategic renewal. Changes in customer needs, new technologies, and shift in competitive landscape all require that companies continually innovate and initiate corporate ventures. This topic addresses how innovation and corporate entrepreneurship help firms create competitive advantage. This topic is divided into three major sections. First section addresses the role of innovation in the venture creation and strategic renewal process. We discuss how companies can effectively manage the innovation process and overcome impediments and challenges to successful innovation. In the second section, it addresses corporate entrepreneurship. It describes techniques used by established companies to instill a spirit of entrepreneurship into corporate strategic thinking. And it discusses the role of focused and dispersed approaches to the venture development process. The third section addresses the practical implication of real option theory in the context of corporate venturing. It describes the influence of an entrepreneurial orientation on venture creation process. It outlines several practical applications of entrepreneurial thinking to strategic decision making and caution about some of the pitfalls associated with an entrepreneurial frame of mind. Strategic leaders need to manage change. Changes in customer needs, new technologies, and shift in the competitive landscape require that companies continually innovate and initiate corporate ventures in order to compete effectively. And that is why managing innovation is an important strategic implementation issue. Innovations play an important role in identifying venture opportunities and creating strategic renewal. Firms need to learn how to successfully manage the innovation process and develop corporate entrepreneurship activities. A firm's entrepreneurial orientation can contribute to its growth and renewal, as well as enhance the methods and processes strategic managers use to recognize opportunities and develop initiatives for internal growth and development. Here are the 5 dimensions of entrepreneurial orientation and how they have been used to enhance internal venture development. These factors work together to enhance the company's entrepreneurial performance. But even those companies that are strong in only a few aspects of entrepreneurial orientation can be very successful. In the final topic on superior strategy execution, it is often said that the key to finding good answers is to ask good questions. Strategic managers and business leaders are required to evaluate options that make choices and find solutions to the challenges they face every day. So to do so, they must learn to ask the right questions. In the final topic about case analysis, it uses real-life situations to present the processes of analysis, formulation, and implementation that has been addressed in this topic. By studying and analyzing the strategic predicament posed by a case, students can see the circumstances business confront are often difficult and complex. Case analysis also challenges the students to make decisions that addresses the dilemmas in the case and evaluate how their recommendation will affect the situation in the case. In the final exhibit, it outlines the 4 stages of the integrated thinking and deciding process, using the example of deciding where to go on vacation to illustrate the stages. The first stage, salience. Now, salience involves taking stock of what features of the decision you consider relevant and important. For example, where will you go? Or what will you see? Where will you stay? And what will it cost? Is it safe? The next stage, causality. Causality requires making a mental map of the causal relationship between the features. For example, is it worth to invite friends to share expenses? Will an exotic destination be less safe? In the architecture stage, use the mental map to arrange the sequence of decisions that will lead to a specific outcome. For example, will you make the hotel and flight arrangement first, or focus on which sightseeing tours are available? Finally, in the resolution, make your selection. For example, choose which destination, which flight, and so forth. Your final resolution is linked to how you evaluate the first 3 stages. If you are dissatisfied with your choices, the dotted arrows in the diagram suggest you can go back through the process and revisit your assumptions. Thank you very much for staying with me through the final revision. I wish all of you every success in the coming exams.